So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, Aston Villa fans, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. And I wasn't going to jump onto a podcast tonight, but it's just been, I don't know how true it is, but the Record Portugal, which have like almost 500,000 followers on Twitter, are reporting that Enzo Barrenechea, the Villa and Benfica have agreed a deal for Enzo Barrenechea, 15 million. 15 million. Oh, why isn't that scrolling across the bottom? I don't know why. For Enzo Barrenechea, and obviously we also know as well today that Kosta Nedeljkovic is to return to RB Leipzig on loan for the 2025-26 season. And I kind of, you know what? I kind of got thinking about this, that I don't know what to think of it, I suppose, really. And that's not the best way to start the podcast. But I don't want to lose two young players. I just don't. I think that two young players like this, specifically Nedeljkovic, and I know Nedeljkovic has gone on loan. Look, if RB Leipzig didn't want to stump up the 9 million extra that it was going to cost to take him full time, well, maybe that's their issue. He goes on loan and he plays better, and then he ends up being a better player, we would hope. And we can charge more money for him. Now, obviously, more details have to come out on that for us to understand what the actual, I suppose, what the actual deal is there. But for me, we'll talk about that in a moment. I want to concentrate more so on the Enzo Barrenechea place, because I'm fond of him. I like him as a player. I like what I saw of him at Valencia. And he's a very functional player. Player who's just made his Argentinian debut. Or sorry, he was just picked for an Argentinian squad. Don't think he actually came on. And I'm torn because I would like to see him stay at Aston Villa. But it looks like Aston Villa are going to cash in on him for 15 million plus sell-on fee, which I don't think is a bad deal. And I'll outline that, why I think that in a moment. So essentially for Barrenechea, what he's really done in football is he's had one good season, one half decent season of Frosinone in Italy, and he's had a very decent season for Valencia in a team that were struggling in La Liga, and he helped them achieve the position they achieved, and he was, he played really, really well in the sixth position. And he comes back to Aston Villa at 24 years of age, and he wants to play football. I think that's probably undeniable, it's, you can't really doubt it, I suppose, really. Comes back to Aston Villa and he wants to play football. And Villa can't give him that football. They can't give him that football at this moment in time, because of the people that are in front of him. You've got Amadou Onana, you've got Boubacar Kamara, you've got Yuri Tielemans, you've got Ross Barkley, arguably. You've arguably got John McGinn in that position as well. So I think it's a victim of circumstance, of positions that are there. And I know people are going to start talking about this in a moment. I know that people are going to start talking about he was always only ever signed to be a PSR deal. And we will discuss that in a moment. And I will discuss why I think that there is, why we should look at this as a potential good bit of business for Aston Villa Football Club, based on what we know and based on what we can see. All right. So, from a footballing point of view, let's take it from the footballing point of view first. That this player has a lot of potential, and somebody that I did a bit of work on. I started watching him very, very closely from January onwards, because he started to kind of gain a small bit of traction. People started talking about him at Valencia at that stage from January onwards. So I looked at him, and he was very functional in that team, and that's how I would describe him, as he was a very functional player there. He knew, and he was learning very, very quickly how to play that sixth position, how to be that kind of a more defensive player than he was at Frosinone. He was by no means was he spectacular in anything that he did, but he was able to break up play as best he could. He was very good at holding his position in the sixth place. And when he took that ball, I was able to get turned. I was able to get that ball off in the short to intermediate range. So a very, very good functional 6 is what I would call him in that Valencia team. Villa don't need a very, very good 6 currently at the moment because, as I mentioned, the players that we have, they're there. They're at the club already. And what I'm torn between here is, I'm torn between the 24-year-old who's beginning to come into his own and start play well, and some of the players that we have there that are 27, 28, 29, 30, or in Ross Barkley's case, I don't know what age he is. Is he 31? Is he 32? I don't know what age Ross, but he could be younger. He might even be 30 yet. I don't know. But I don't know what age he is, but he would be one of the more elder statesmen in that team. And I'm torn between the influx of new blood in there or keeping that for another year, what we have there for another year from a chemistry point of view, number one. And secondly, because all in all, they're probably they're all better players than him. They're all better players than him in this current year. And that's where I'm kind of torn. I'm torn between the long-sightedness of can we develop this fellow over the next year, 18 months to come into the team at 25, going on 26, and replace one of those players. Or do we take the short-sighted view and say, he's 24, let's see what we can get from him now and get our sell-on fee. So if he does progress at a team like Benfica, who, let's be honest, like to buy players and flog them for much more to teams in Europe afterwards. They're very good nursery for players. Enzo Barrenechea is going to want to be in the Argentinian squad. He ain't getting into the Argentinian squad when he plays for Aston Villa. He's like, if he was to come back and sit in our bench, he's not getting into that squad. And he's going to get a chance to go to Benfica if the rumors are true. He's going to get a chance to go to Benfica. And all we have to do is look at that right back whose name is Alvaro Caceres. I'm going to butcher his name, but that right back that moved from Manchester United to Benfica and has now been sold to Real Madrid for multiples of what he was sold to Benfica for. Benfica have a very good track record of taking players at modest enough fees, really building them up. They're a brilliant nursery, always have been. Portuguese football is a brilliant nursery for South American players anyway, building them up and then selling them on for high profit. So if Villa looked at this and gone, okay, maybe 15 million euros might look a small bit shallow on the short side. I actually am beginning to think it's probably about right, his fee, because we have to remember a lot of the sales that Villa have done recently have involved the English tax, selling to other English teams or English players. There is a British tax there. All you have to do is look at Douglas Luiz's sales, Luiz's sale. And we're going to take a look at those in a moment, because when we talk about the financial side and the football side, I want to parse those two things out. So from the football side, I think this would be a good move for Barrenechea, but I also think it's going to be a good move for Aston Villa based on the fact that they would have a sell-on fee included here. I think that's probably smart work. So let's say you get 15 million, put on a sell-on fee of, I don't know, 20%, 25%, or whatever the case is. He gets sold for, I don't know, let's say 35 million in 2 years' time to some team in Spain, and Villa recoup 25% of the profits there based on that, which is probably about another, which would be 20 million, 25% of that is another 5 million in transfer fees. So essentially, Villa would have gotten 20 million for Enzo Barrenechea, which probably at the time for a player that wasn't going to fit into your squad, wasn't going to fit into the rotation, and probably wanted to move to keep his face under the nose of the Argentinian manager. I think all in all, that would probably be considered a pretty decent deal for Aston Villa, for a person who never kicked the ball for your club in meaningful football. So from the footballing side, I think that passes muster. Some of you guys may disagree with me, and I think that's absolutely fine. I would love to have seen what he could do with Aston Villa, but the pathway to keep playing for Aston Villa, I think, is not there for him at the moment, much not as I would like to maybe freshen up that room slightly with somebody like this. I think the Unai Emery is going to be pretty happy with what he has there. Now, if I share up my screen here, and the reason I'm sharing up my screen here is just because I'm going to take transfer markets I'm going to take transfer markets valuations for stuff. So two things. I've been critical at times about transfer markets valuations. What I'm taking here is what they actually report as what the signing on, what the fees paid for players were. All right. So what I'm going to do here is for this, let me just see if I can zoom in here on. Are we zooming in? Oh, yeah. Of course we did. Zoomed in on the wrong bloody screen, didn't I? Give me a moment. I do this every time. There we go. So if we see here, Juventus to Aston Villa, the fee, the transfer market have shown here is 8 million euros. Okay. And there's Matt Hayes' head. I don't know where Matt Hayes has been on this podcast a couple of times. 8 million euros. We don't know what the loan fee to Valencia was last year. If there was a loan fee, I presume there was. So we don't know what that is. So we can't factor that into how much Aston Villa have made from this player at all. So if we talk that Juventus sold Aston Villa, he was valued at 8 million for the book value on that trade deal, let's call it, when Stefan Illing Jr. came in. If Villa are selling him for 15 million and he's never kicked the ball in anger for the club, and yes, he did play in Spain for Valencia for a year, but after 1 year, you're doubling almost the value of the player, plus with future profit to come on top of it. I think, and let's remember as well, there aren't clubs kicking down Villa's door to offer more than 15 million euros either. Let's bear that in mind too. The market for players is only there if there's bidding wars or if there's clubs bidding against each other. And as far as we know, that is not the case. Could be, but as far as we know, that's not the case. For Villa to be able to flip a player in a year for 15 million euros, I think is pretty positive. And plus, with the future, if you're holding a percentage to his rights into the future, I think that, and potentially you could get more money back in the future from other sales. I think that's a positive. I don't know. I would like you guys to. I come to your guys' comments in a moment before I move on to Kosta and Nedeljkovic in a minute. But I think that that's a positive. And from the balance sheet, financial shitty PSR situation, SCR situation that we're in now, the value Villa would book on this would not really be the wages that this guy is earning. I don't know, do transfer market even talk about wages anywhere, do they? No, don't seem to. Anything down here? I can never remember what's in transfer market anyway. It's just full of ads. Whatever. So if you book your 15 million value against him, you know, that's obviously revenue, which helps us in SCR. All right. Now, also, another thing that I wanted to bring the attention to here as well is, and we'll use transfer market for this, just for standardization. I'm just gonna bear with me there for a moment. So at the time when we sold Dougie Luiz, at the time, it was said that we probably got less for Douglas Luiz than we should have. And I think that that's more or less correct. But the transfer for Douglas Luiz is not over. I don't know if I'm lagging there, guys. It looks like it's lagging on my side. There's absolute torrential rain outside. So apologies. I better turn on the comments here just to see. So you can see if I can take a look at them. And well, let me turn on the comments there. Everything has gone really slow from here. For me here. Apologies, guys. Let me just add this to the stage. Doesn't seem to want to add up. So when we look at the Douglas Luiz deal here, if Douglas Luiz, and once again, we're just taking this as standardization, if Douglas Luiz was sold for 51.5 million euros last year, and we now add on 15 million euros with plus future profit coming again in future for Enzo Barrenechea, that brings us to 65.5 million euros last year. Now, if his market value is 70 million euros for Douglas Luiz, we're coming closer to a value that potentially he was worth when we sold him. Or we're probably there, I suppose, really, when you factor in the percentage sell-on fee. And we still have Samuel Illing Jr., which is another person who potentially could be out the door for, under 21 European Championship winning player, played at Borough last year. You'll see some people who say he played poorly. You'll see some people who say he played very, very decently. I think, and I watched 6 of his games last year. I think he played pretty okay. And he wasn't as dire as a lot of people say he is. I think people are just down on him for whatever reason from that point of view. But when we start to add all this up, the club are looking, if you're looking at it from a balance sheet point of view, the club are in a position now where they're going to maximize all those profits from that Douglas Luiz piece. Have we seen it on the field? Yes, we have as well. We have seen it on the field too, because our ready-made replacement in Yuri Tielemans cost us 0. And he's come in and arguably, very arguably, I would actually love to have a team where we have both of them in it, where Yuri Tielemans and Douglas Luiz. But arguably, he became more important to us in the year just gone than Douglas Luiz was in the year previous. And that's an argument fellas can have over points, and there's probably going to be no right or wrong answer to that question. Yes, maybe if Yuri Tielemans could score penalties, that would be better, like Douglas Luiz could. And I know he missed 1 or 2 towards the end. But so what I'm getting at here is that when we look at things in a vacuum, when we look at an Enzo Barrenechea transfer in a vacuum, for me, I didn't want it to happen. But the pros and the cons list for both the club and the player are: the player isn't going to get the game time he's going to need. The club have seen an opportunity to almost will double the amount of money that the book value payment that they have on him, and they will then they will actually have this future proofing of his value if he does become better at a club that likes to nurture players and does more often than not sell players on for more than they bought them for. Let's say he becomes the new Enzo Barrenechea becomes the new Enzo Fernandez. And 2 years later, Chelsea are knocking the door down looking to buy him for 100 million. Bill are 25 million in their back pocket from that. So, and I don't know what the percentage is. I'm spitballing here with that. What I'm saying here is that for a player isn't going to get into your team next year, Villa decided to sell him. Now, also when we talk about Kosta Nedeljkovic as well, let's have a little talk about him, because obviously he went on loan to RB Leipzig. And Villa had agreed a deal with Leipzig to the purchase value. I can't remember what it was. Was it 15 million euros, 9 million pounds, something along those lines? I can't remember what it was. And they couldn't come to a deal for this to actually be done, for the money to actually be they couldn't agree on money. And the reason for that is that Leipzig are kind of going, shit, we've got no Champions League football next year, and we've got a small enough stadium, and we've got a manufactured fan base. A lot of their predications of their club are being in Champions League football. So they're looking at this from the point of view of going, and plus they've got SCR stuff as well that they need to look after too from being in European competition. And they're like going, we need to make adjustments here. They're looking to sell Lois Openda for 60 million. So they need to make adjustments. So they weren't able to stump up the cash. It wasn't that. I think that if they got Champions League football, Kosta Nedeljkovic would be an RB Leipzig player, full-time player. It would be signed, sealed, to deliver for whatever the money that was agreed was. But it's not happening. He's gone on loan again. Now, he didn't get a whole pile of minutes at RB Leipzig last year. You will go on the internet and you will see people say that he beat out Gertrude towards the end, and that is true. He did beat out Lutrail Gertrude, who we were linked to as well, towards the end of the year last year. But he still only played the bones, I think, of about 900 minutes. I'm open to correction on that last year. And he's very much a player that's still learning his trade. Much not as he came in heralded because of his physical stature and everything. And I like Kosta Nedeljkovic probably more than most. I like these two players more than most. That's why I've highlighted them. Probably like these two players more than most people do. And the right back position is always going to be a position of contention for Aston Villa fans. It's going to be a contentious position because, like, as long as Unai Emery is going to tinker and play as many people as he's played at right back, it's going to be a contentious position. It's very difficult for anybody to stick their flag in the ground and say, this person is the right back that I absolutely 100% want to be starting for Aston Villa Football Club, because they all have their frailties and they're all not ideal currently at the club. if we didn't sell, if Kosta, and I did a Claret and Blue this morning, and I said, if Kosta Nedeljkovic doesn't go anywhere, we just can't as a club afford to devote resources to bringing in another right back. We just wouldn't have been able to do it. But now Kosta Nedeljkovic has gone somewhere else on loan. I think potentially we will have a look at another right back or two in this off season. That'll be music to a lot of people's ears, music to my ears too. We need to nail down that position. It's been a conveyor belt. It's been a revolving door there with people who've come in and come out. I think I went through it, and I think we had 6 right backs last year that played at right back last year. And that in itself is not great. You know, that's not great. So with the Kosta Nedeljkovic piece, again, he's going to a club which is a nursery, a club that's known for selling players or improving players. We also have this. So the reason I think it's a positive that he's not going to be with Aston Villa next year is he wasn't going to be our first choice right back. I just don't think he was. Age related, number one. Rawness related, number two. And as much as I love his intangibles, absolutely love his intangibles. I think that it was going to be Cash and Garcia were going to be the 2 rotationary pieces there. Or mystery player A that isn't at the club yet. So by loaning out Kosta Nedeljkovic to a team who have proven they've wanted to play him and potentially wanted to sign him full time, but financially maybe constrained until they financially are constrained. Loaning out to a team that have proven, as I said, that they wanted to play him. He has now, in this instance, got an opportunity to learn at another nursery club. And second of all, get game time, increase his value, and entice other suitors to the market. Now, I don't know what the ins and outs of either of these 2 transfers are. There was somebody there asking about the Barrenechea rumor. It came from Record Portugal. The 500,000 followers on Twitter, and this has been rumored to be happening today. Benfica were negotiating between 12 million euros and 15 million euros. There's supposed to be a negotiation there, and this Twitter account have been on it all day today, and they've said that it's now been reached at 15 million with that. And so I just saw somebody ask that there. So it's, for me, I think that it's a positive that Kosta Nedeljkovic is going to Leipzig on loan. I think that's probably the best outcome we could have for him currently at the moment, because I believe his ceiling is quite high. I believe it's quite high. I believe in Barrenechea's is as well. Barrenechea is 24 years of age. Nedeljkovic has youth on his side. He has rawness on his side. He has the ability. He has the potential to grow at a faster rate from a younger age, I think. And I think him going out on loan to RB Leipzig is something that the club are actually happier is happening, as opposed to having to sell him or opposed to selling him. But I do think that if the money came, if 12 million came for him or so on, I think the club would have sold him. Because once again, let's see what Kosta Nedeljkovic was purchased for. I think it was 6 million euros. So let's say 12 or 13 million comes in for him. The club are going flipping a player for double what they paid for him, and they only have him. I can see him here. I'm sorry, what was he? He's purchased for 8 million. 8 million. But Villa, but Red Star paid 2. Yeah, there's something there. Like I don't know what's happening here, but it's weirdly done here. It's like as if Villa paid 6.5 million for him or something. It doesn't make any sense. Oh no, sorry. Anyway, I'm trying to read something here and I'm only half reading it. So let's say Villa paid 8 million for him, and they got an offer of 13 million for him, and they were going to flip him for 5 million plus whatever the loan fee was that RB Leipzig paid last year. Villa might have been thinking on the short-term basis from the balance sheet there. And I think that's okay, because I don't think the club can have 3 dedicated right backs at this club. And I know everybody is screaming at their screen going, sell Matty Cash for whatever, to whoever will buy him and play the 2 young kids and see which one gets the job. It's not that easy if you want to stay challenging for 4th or 5th place. It's not that easy. And this isn't me defending any player on the team. It's me seeing the club probably looking at it from an opportunity cost point of view and flipping players in this stupid system that we have, whereby a club as flush with money as Aston Villa are cannot spend amongst their means. And I suppose when I put it that way, it probably seems a fair system. But I'm bitching and moaning about it because I want Aston Villa to progress at a higher rate, like other teams in the past have been able to do. So from that point of view, I think that I think that the Nedeljkovic one is exactly what the club wanted. I think they wanted to. I also think the Kosta Nedeljkovic transfer is linked to us. Why we're only taking. Here comes my tinfoil. Where's my tinfoil? Here's my conspiracy theory, guys. I think RB Leipzig not taking up the very pointed fee of about 15 million euros, 15 million pounds or whatever it was, 15 million euros. I think that might have had something with Aston Villa, the news coming out late in June about Aston Villa selling the women's team to themselves. If there was a negligible amount that Aston Villa needed to make to meet PSR requirements, Kosta Nedeljkovic or Emi Buendia, prior to Xabi Alonso not being at Bayern Munich anymore, or potentially Enzo Barrenechea, which those deals didn't materialize. I believe if one or more of those deals had been done, Villa would not have sold the women's team. Or I believe that Kosta Nedeljkovic was supposed to have been a done deal. I believe they thought that Leipzig were definitely going to do it. It didn't, and then that potentially had a bearing on it. Now, I've got nothing to go on there other than it kind of makes sense in my brain. I'm not saying that that's true. I'm not saying that it's probably false. But what we were led to believe from when Leipzig did the deal, the initial loan deal for Kosta Nedeljkovic, was that they were going to sign him. And then suddenly they weren't because they didn't get Champions League football. And to be honest with you, I don't think anybody thought that they weren't going to get Champions League football within the German league, because of how, I suppose, up there with the rest of the teams they've been over the last couple of years. So potentially that has something to do with it. I don't know. Do quote me on it. I don't know whether I'm right or not. Anyway, let's go to some of your comments there, guys. I'm very, very, very aware that I might be lagging all over the place because when I click on stuff here on my screen, it ain't responding. So I do apologize if people are here. So let me get to some of the comments. So Stephen Bride says it's a shame. I'm a big fan of what I've seen of Enzo for Valencia, but in Unai I trust. And look, I think 3 years into this, you're right to trust Unai, but I don't think for every single deal that we make, we have to justify it with Unai I trust. I think this is, I think that it's very simply that he wasn't going to get into the team. And I think that he wanted to make a move. And I think the club, like there aren't clubs beating down Villa's door for him. I think, as I mentioned previously, for anybody who's late coming into the party, that as per transfer market, Enzo Barrenechea was valued at 8 million in the move to Aston Villa, and Villa are getting 15 million plus whatever the percentage of the sell-on clause is that's rumored to be there as well. And I think the club went, after a year and he hasn't kicked the ball for us, could we get 15 million for him, sell him to a team that has a massive, massive history of inflating players' values when they sell on again, include that sell-on percentage, which Benfica often do to reduce transfer fees? I don't know. I think that potentially that's what the club saw. And maybe Barrenechea came back and said, listen, guys, if I'm going to be number 5 or number 6 in your depth chart, I'm not going on loan again. I need to be able to forge a future for myself. So once again, I don't know. But it is a shame that we're losing him. Don't get me wrong, for those who are just joining. I'm very, very high on Enzo Barrenechea, and I'm really high on Kosta Nedeljkovic. But I'm trying to see the urgency in which these guys are going. I'm trying to see it from all points. And from a footballing point, I want them to stay. From a selfish club point, from their playing point of view, I don't think Barrenechea really wants to stick around here because he saw the depth chart in front of him. And more power to the man, 24 years of age, just after getting into the Argentinian squad, if he wants to go to forge a future for himself. And Benfica is a big draw for South American players. Huge draw. Where else are we there? PSK says we have a 1-in, 1-out policy at the minute. Enzo book profit will be 4 million. I personally think that it's a shame we're selling him, especially considering midfield injuries. I think the book value is higher than that, but I'm not going to question you. You've come up with right nuggets in the past that have been right bang on the money. So I'll take that for a written PSK, because the amount of times that you've passed us stuff that have transpired very shortly afterwards has been absolutely has been myriad. So thanks a million for that. Kelvin says as well, let's not forget that Bogart is also essential defensive midfielder first and foremost, and he's a right back. So with two guys we're talking about here is Enzo Barrenechea and Kosta Nedeljkovic. The two of them leave the club, and we've got one person who can potentially fill either of those positions. And his versatility is probably Bogart's versatility is probably why he will stay around the squad, because that versatility is going to be and plus as well that he's considered a homegrown player as well for Europe. That's quite good too. Now Enzo Barrenechea is a better player than him. Kosta Nedeljkovic has the opportunity, has all the intangibles to be a better player than him. But where they are in the rotations in both of those positions, probably being right back number 3, Kosta Nedeljkovic, and probably being central midfielder number, what did I say, number 5 if you count McGinn as a right winger, or 6 if you count McGinn as a central midfielder. And maybe you put Barrenechea above Ross Barkley. But I think it's probably fair to say that Barrenechea is behind Youri Tielemans, Boubacar Kamara, Amadou Onana, John McGinn for those 2-6 positions. I think it's probably fair to say that he's behind those players, given what those players have done for the club, their fees that were paid for them, and obviously the experience that they have playing football. Kelvin asks, will Illing Jr. be next? You'd have to think so, wouldn't you? You'd have to think so. But I think Illing Jr. would probably more than likely go on a loan to a championship team. I think we could get the English tax for Illing Jr., especially a team in the championship, maybe a team that's just gone down, wants to buy a player that has won a European under-21 championship. Stranger things have happened. I would probably lean on loan for Illing Jr. next year to a championship team again. And I don't know why, but all that seems to go around in my mind is a team that's just been relegated. I don't know which one, but it just somebody who's on parachute payments. Just I don't know why. Just stands to reason there. Yeah, sorry guys, if I am lagging a small bit, I do apologize. I really, really do apologize. It's the weather is absolutely biblical here. Like I'm going to just build an ark, I think, but put 2 of every animal on it after, because the rain is absolutely torrential where I am at the moment. Kelvin, this is I'm highlighting all your stuff, but I think it's good stuff. I think we get too idealistic about some of these young players. We want them to be good, but as Philogene showed us, wanting them to do well doesn't mean they will be. Better to cash in. I love the sentiment to that in a lot of ways, but the romance of young players making it is a hell of a drug. The romantic want for a Philogene, for a Louis Barry, for Ben Braggio coming up, Hemmings, Cole Brannigan, Mason Kotcher, Jamal Oba, even a Roy Wilson, somebody who sat out more than half the season last year. The romance, the effect that has to somebody that you've nurtured through the academy, who you feel has the claret and blue in their DNA. There's an allure to that. Every single football fan would love a first 11 of the best players in the world. That's why it must be so intoxicating to be a Barcelona fan at times, or a Real Madrid fan, or going back to the days of AC Milan producing all these brilliant players. It must have been so intoxicating for those teams, to be able to do that, be able to pluck players at will from their academy system, bring them into the first team. I think that's brilliant. But pragmatism, Kelvin, as we grow older, you're dead right. Pragmatism has to hit at some stage. And there comes a time when you see these players week in, week out, or in some instances where you don't see them week in, week out when they're out and loan the whole time. And you need to balance the books. And you need to pay the piper, and somebody has to be the fall guy for it. So it's the juxtaposition of being a football fan in 2025, I think. And only the clubs like it's a massive skill that the likes of Chelsea and Man City have, that they can loan continuously out their players, continuously loan them out and get big bucks and big value for them. 3 years ago, I sat here and I bitched and moaned about Shea Charles moving on from Man City, about Gavin Bazzuno being sold from Man City, about James Trafford being sold from Man City, about I've bitched about Taylor Harwood Bayless, is that how you pronounce his name, being moved on. All those guys. Because at the time I was going, lads, we are lining the pockets of Man City and they're not getting any worse. And those teams, arguably, albeit Cole Palmer has been a massive success since he's left there. And I'm sure Liam Delap has been a massive success since he's left there. They've sold a lot of players for a lot of money that they've been able to book massive values for on the balance sheet. They've been able to keep them affording who they need to afford while they've grown their revenues. And their revenues have skyrocketed in the last 4 years. So there's a massive entity. The best teams can play the loan market to inflate their players' values and sell them at the right times. And I'm hoping that this is the start of Aston Villa attempting to get into that situation. Arguably, they've done it already with Aaron Ramsey, Jadon Philogene, Cameron Archer. We've got good money for those guys, really good money for those guys as well. So we've done it with our own. Maybe we're buying players in at a lower value, the likes of Kosta, Nedeljkovic, the likes of Enzo, Barrenechea, and we're flipping them in the short term to double our money. Whatever the book values and stuff like that are on players. Once again, I'm not financially literate and all that kind of stuff, but it's more money. We're getting more money out of it than we were losing. That makes sense. So I don't know. It's a sad side of football. It's a really sad side of football that I wish I didn't have to worry about. And I wish you guys didn't have to worry about. And I wish, I wish I never had to hear of the word book value or squad cost ratio or stuff like that anymore. But it's just more and more prevalent. Where else are we? Yeah, Paul Miller says we really need to shift Leander Dendoncker and nobody wants him. 30 now wages are insane. That's the biggest problem with Dendoncker. Dendonker's wages were 45 grand a week. We'd keep him around. From a functionality point of view, I think. Plus, we'd be able to offload him. But I don't know what they are, but I would imagine they're a hell of a lot more than that. And I would not be surprised if it was a case whereby if somebody just came in and said, right, we just take on his contract value, whatever wages he's on, we come on, we take on his wages for the next year. And kind of, just get that off our books. I'd say that's what Villa are looking for. But I think Leander Dendoncker will leave Aston Villa, obviously. I think he's going to be gone. I think we will shift him. But I think he's one of those ones that we're shifting transfer deadline day. Because I think that there's no urgency for teams to get in there. I think the closer it gets to deadline day, the better it is actually for Aston Villa in that aspect. Because the bidding war will probably happen. There will be teams who've lost out on other targets that they wanted to get. They might have a go at Leander Dendoncker and then say, do you know what? Listen, look, we'll give you 60 grand if he's 70 grand a week. I think that while we do need to move him, Villa are in no real rush to do it because they're not going to get massive value for him. It's a case about maximizing what we get for him. And yes, could we be left with him for another year? There's an absolute possibility of that. But I think I would be pretty confident that Leander Dendoncker won't want to sit in a bomb squad somewhere for Aston Villa. And I think he will go and play football somewhere. And I think the club will allow him to go and play football somewhere before the window is up. I absolutely think that. Or else are we? Yeah, Paul, and unfortunately, Paul, it was an internet issue. It was an internet issue because my CPU usage was fine. I think anyway. I think it is right. I'm lagging all over the place. I do apologize, guys. Hopefully this audio is a bit cleaner and you guys can listen back to it properly on the podcast forums. Thank you so much for bearing with me on this. The weather has finally stopped outside, so hopefully my internet is going to get a small bit better. Thanks a million. Really appreciate you guys jumping on. This wasn't forecasted, this podcast or anything, so I just needed to get all that off my chest. I fully aware that people will think that the fees for Enzo Barrenechea are too low. I tend to agree, but I can see the reason why the club have done it, and I can see the reason why the player probably doesn't want to stick around with Aston Villa to be sixth choice. So, do you maximize what you can get now as opposed to having him sit in the bench for the year? Could we have loaned him out? We probably could have, but once again, there's money to be made here, and flipping a player for double what you valued him at this time last year is probably short-termist, but still sound business. Anyway, go and leave it at that, guys. Thanks a million to everybody for your comments, as always. Please like, share, subscribe, all that beautiful stuff on the podcast, and we'll be back maybe tomorrow. Might be able to see if I can get Jay or Paddy on tomorrow. If not, you will see me before the Walsall game. And then also we've got Hansa Rostock coming up this weekend. So we'll have a packed couple of days of podcasting, and I hope you'll join us for that as well. Thanks a million for your time. Stay safe, stay healthy. And all that's left to say is up.